When you're talking about high-stakes, million-dollar sourcing deals, the final outcome, it's almost never just about the price. Nope, it's shaped by something way more powerful and honestly, something that's often misunderstood: power dynamics. Today, we're going to break down who really holds the cards.
So let's just jump right into the big question. In a huge multi-million-dollar contract, is it automatically the buyer with the big checkbook who's calling all the shots? Or is it the supplier who has that one-of-a-kind product you just can't get anywhere else? Well, as you're about to see, the answer is a whole lot more complicated than you might think. Here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll redefine what power even means in sourcing. Then, we'll look at the classic tug-of-war between supplier and buyer leverage. We are absolutely going to bust a huge myth about who's really in charge, and then we'll give you a playbook for tilting the scales back in your favor. And finally, we'll get into collaboration and the ethics of all this. Let's do it.
Okay, first things first, we have to redefine power. Because in the world of procurement, it is so easy to think that power just means being the biggest company in the room or having the largest budget to throw around. But, that is a dangerously simple way to look at it.
This definition right here, this is absolutely crucial for our entire conversation. See, real power isn't about dominance or bullying. It's the ability to influence the final deal, the terms, the price, the whole relationship without having to sacrifice your own value to get it. It's all about strategic advantage, not brute force.
Yeah, because the real sources of that strategic advantage, they're usually hidden. They're not the things you're going to see on a company's fancy letterhead or in their big annual report.
Real power, true power, comes from having credible alternatives. Other suppliers you can actually turn to. It comes from having better, more complete information than the other side. And maybe, most importantly, it comes from your ability to control or lessen risk. These three things, these are what really define your leverage in any big deal.
Okay, so keeping that new definition in mind, let's see how this power struggle actually plays out for both sides of the table, the supplier and the buyer. Because this balance, it's always shifting depending on what's happening in the market.
What I love about this slide is how clearly it just lays out this tug-of-war. A supplier's power goes through the roof if they're the only game in town, right? Or if demand is super high, or if their tech is critical and switching away from them would be a nightmare. But on the other side, the buyer gets more powerful when there's a bunch of good suppliers competing, when their demand is big and predictable, and when what they need is pretty standard, making it easy to switch.
And that brings us to what might be the single most important idea in this entire explainer, the myth of buyer power. This is a trap that so many procurement teams fall into, especially when those million-dollar contracts are on the line.
It's just so tempting to think that a huge contract value, a famous brand name, or a long-standing relationship means you automatically hold all the cards. But more often than not, these are just assumptions, a false sense of security that can completely disappear the second a negotiation gets real.
Because, look, what you think your power is means absolutely nothing. If your only supplier knows you have nowhere else to go, your leverage is gone. Poof. So this is the key. True power is only revealed when you actually have to use it.
So if you can't just assume you have power, how do you build it? This is where we shift from theory to actual strategy. The secret is to rebalance the entire power dynamic long before you even think about sitting down at the table.
This is it. If you remember one thing from today, make it this. Power isn't something you fight for during the negotiation. It's something you carefully and methodically build during your preparation. The work you do, your sourcing strategy, your risk planning, your market analysis, that is what actually determines your leverage.
So here's the playbook. This is how you do it. You build power by developing real, viable alternatives. You break up the project scope so you're not locked in all at once. You create modular specs so more suppliers can bid. You build in flexibility with things like exit clauses, and you time the negotiation to your advantage. Every single step systematically makes you less dependent and gives you more options.
Okay, but let's be real. What happens when the supplier just genuinely has all the power? In some markets, a supplier might have a patent or some exclusive tech or a flat-out monopoly. In those cases, trying to force a confrontation is a losing game.
This is such a critical pivot point. When you've done all your homework and you realize that the power balance just is what it is, your goal has to change. You have to move from a mindset of confrontation to one of smart collaboration.
So the objective isn't dominance anymore, it's value protection.
You start working with that powerful supplier through things like joint planning sessions. You create shared risk models so you both have skin in the game. You structure long-term deals that lock in value and protect your organization, even if you can't control every single term. It's a really practical and often a really successful strategy. And finally, we have to talk about the responsibility that comes with having power. Whether you built it through all that careful preparation or it's just your position in the market, how you use that power matters a lot.
And listen, this isn't just about being nice or fair, it's about being sustainable. Smart procurement isn't about squeezing every last penny out of a supplier today, it's about building healthy, resilient supply chains for tomorrow.
Because if you get too aggressive with your power, it can backfire spectacularly. You could push your critical supplier into financial trouble. You might see them start to cut corners, and then your quality erodes, and ultimately, you're just introducing massive long-term risk into your own business. A truly strong agreement is one where both sides can actually succeed.
So as we wrap this up, let's come back to our main theme one last time. Don't get fooled by the drama of the negotiation room. That's just the final act of the play. The real story, the source of all your leverage, is written way before that, in the quiet, methodical work of preparation.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the modern strategic way to think about procurement. Success isn't about winning a fight. It's about shaping the conditions with smart alternatives, with market intelligence, with risk management, where a fair, sustainable agreement just becomes the most logical outcome for everybody involved.
And that leaves us with one final thought for you to take back to your own work. Is your preparation just focused on the talking points for the meeting? Or are you strategically shaping the conditions for success long before that conversation even begins? The difference between those two, well, that's everything.